Sejam muito bem-vindos à terceira parte do nosso evento. Espero que tenham tido um bom almoço, que tenha sido do vosso agrado e que nos acompanhem agora nesta terceira parte para ouvir. Isto deve ser a primeira vez que estamos a antecipar, isto tem corrido tão bem do ponto de vista do cumprimento do cumprimento dos timings, que conseguimos antecipar ainda por cima este nosso programa. E agora, and now, this is a third part, and I will ask our colleague from GS1 Global Office, Francesca Poggiali, to introduce us the theme about the digital product passport. Francesca is now in a position of Chief Public Policy Officer in Europe for Global Office, and she had a long career also in Ferrero International, and as always in the European Commission. She also has an academic background in Harvard Business Review in the subject of sustainability. So, with this, I welcome Francesca Poggiali for this presentation. Please, Francesca, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Obrigada. Please come.
This is to pass the slides here, okay? Thank you. Then we will have a small chat over there, okay?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Distinguished speakers that were there this morning, Direttore Executivo, GS1 Portugal leadership team, dear friends and colleagues, thank you so much for having me. I traveled from Brussels with a lot of passion to be with you today because I had some important messages and it was such an honor for me to have this opportunity. So I'm a human being, I'm not an artificial intelligence, and I have a passport in my hands. I choose to show only one, but I currently have two. One from Italy, the other one from the Kingdom of Belgium, where I live since 27 years. So, but I want to simplify the case today. I'm a human being and I have a passport. Why am I saying this? Because very soon, this object will also need to carry passports. And this is why I really congratulate GS1 Portugal for drawing your attention to this important milestone of what is happening on the European market with a global impact. So, because I spoke to some of you, and you are based also outside Europe, well, this will impact you as well. So don't stop listening. This has a global impact. Every object or component of finished products entering the European market will need to carry this. And this is what it's all about today. I have a few minutes for this talk, and then we have some questions. Where was it born, this idea of objects having passports? We are used, and some of you are engineers, you explained so well that objects can discuss among themselves today. With artificial intelligence, this is really already a reality. But the need to identify those objects or components is becoming even bigger because of this big technological area that we are living. We felt the need, under different perspectives, to uniquely identify those components. And the idea was born among industry a long time ago. The GS1 colleagues who are here since many years, they know that this is not new. The fact of knowing exactly a component part of a finished product was a given. It's a no-brainer for the GS1 people. They are the ones who make identification since 50 years already. We are in the 52nd anniversary this year. So the fact of having passports or identification for products and components is not new to us, not at all. What is new is that the governments discovered how important it is, and they jumped in. So if in the last 50 years it was something for IoT engineers, for techie people, for industry, and from standards, fair enough. Now we have somebody else dictating us how to do it, and these are the governments. That's why my first slide is speaking about how many pieces of legislation we have seen in the last 5 years I have white hair. I'm in Brussels since 27 years, and I've seen the growing number of legislation being exponentially, especially in the last term, the political term, the one that is finishing now with the elections in June. It was an unprecedented speed that we also had to confront. It was not just the quantity and the relevance of those acts for us in the GS1, in the standards world, in the IoT, in the digital twin transformation and so on. It is also the content of those legislation that completely overlap with how products should be named. What do you do with the product data that you generate if you are in a farmer, in your own industry? That data is a part of it that, according to the new European Data Act, belongs to everybody. We see the potential of using product data, the beneficial of many. Yes, but only few will need to develop it. And how you develop it is sometimes a challenge, and still today it is. So the quantity and the relevance of legislation push the European Union to call itself, and this is a European Commission slide, you see the logo on the left, they call themselves a tsunami of legislation. So in case some of you didn't notice, it is really a tsunami of legislation that we faced. And all this legislation hits the sectors that are today represented here. It's always food, feed, medicinal products. It's also retailing. It's a lot of apparel and footwear. It's a lot of detergents. And the way you move goods along the supply chain is in the scope of the European regulators and of, I would say, the 27 governments that participated in the last term at European level. So under this tsunami, the idea came out under the Green Deal to have the net zero goal for 2050 in Europe. Europe wants to be the first decarbonized area of the world. More than 190 countries ratified the Paris Agreement, the one that is bringing humanity towards the capability of decreasing the CO2 emissions. Europe did the same. The European Union also ratified the Paris Agreement. The Portuguese government did the same. All governments in Europe did the same. So we need to reach this 2050 goal. And out of a sudden, we found ourselves, all industry sectors, under the one or the other necessities or regulation on how to do it. So basically, this looks like a nice slide, but it became a nightmare of legislation because under each one of those chapters, you had more than 300 acts that were generated telling industry how to do the product data that they've been already and always using at different levels, of course, different levels dictated from the market of what you needed to do. Maybe if I'm in the food sector and I want to exchange food data requirements today, well, I have already some environments where I can exchange more already than 200 data requirements because the food sector is very advanced. In healthcare, this was already dictated by regulation, little by little, over the years. It was for safety. What is new now is that this is for circularity. So the word sustainability is not so much used anymore at European level. It's really circularity. How to make your business both green and digital and still making profit out of it. And this is the circular business model that the MacArthur Foundation developed, that you have heard in the Harvard Business School reviews and so on. It's a new way of doing business, which should make sense for the planet, for the human protection, and for your business as well. Under this idea of a circular business model, the need came out very easily to have a passport for products. Because how do I count the CO2 emission in order to reach the 2050 goal? How do I do it? I need to do it per product. And how do I count the CO2 emission if I don't know what the product is, if I do not identify the product? So that's where the idea of a passport came out. But as I said, some industry standards experts already knew that in a nutshell this was possible. Today, we already exchange, in some cases, the brand name, the weight, the color. Sometimes we exchange also images. It's starting more and more, right? Very good images because you want to sell products also on marketplaces. But here we're going towards an era where you will need to exchange also CO2 emissions and the ability of every product to be recycled and reusable, like in the French law that has already been passed. Because some governments are influencing the European Union more than others, I have to say. So, the digital product passport is a mandatory data structure. This is not a voluntary thing. The law has already passed. It was approved by the Council and the European Parliament last December in the final political agreement. It's done. It's not something that the European Union can now retrieve, or, you know, sometimes we have the habit of having legislation being somehow retrieved, or like the farm to fork, the recent example after the farming protests in Europe. In this case, it won't be possible because this is approved. It will be published in the official journal of the European Union in the summer. So we are speaking about a mandatory data structure that impacts companies from all over the world. Because if you export components or finished products into the European market, you will need to get ready with your passports. And who will be the responsible actor for delivering or not delivering the product, passport? Well, the law says the first economic operators who put the product on the market. How do I know if I'm the first one? Because we are speaking to companies that tell us, hey, I don't even know where my products are sold today, because you know, the day that they leave my plant, and I speak with 10 years of one company, as Beatrice said, the day that those products leave your plants, they belong to other companies that are transporting them, ensuring that they reach their locations, their destinations. Sometimes you control those companies, sometimes you don't. So who is the first economic operator who puts the product on the market? It can be the importer, it can be the exporter, it can be the company that, one of the company that takes the products out of your plant and position them on the market, the one that sells them to the retailers. Sometimes they are also the retailers, the first legal entity. So this, for the retailers that are in the room, this is really a big change. You need to look back and be able to look back of all the supply chains of the products that you sell and be sure about the fact that you are not the first one. Because if you are the first one of putting those products into the market, you are the one. You need to have passports in place. The point is that you don't know how to do it, because the passport demands data that comes from others. But also the manufacturers will need to have data that comes from others. So the supply chain discussions that we have had today are really very important to enable every economic actor to deliver a passport. Otherwise, liability will follow. So if you want to have an example of which are the components of this product passport, I repeat the master data elements that I already mentioned. For some of you who are familiar with the GS1 program called Verified by GS1, those data attributes are the same. So the brand, the name, the size, the color, the market of destination, which sometimes is difficult, and then some green capabilities of the products, like the CO2 emissions, the durability, the repairability, as I said, and the presence of substances of high concern. So maybe this is not the case in the room, but if there are questions on the substances of high concern, I'll be happy to answer to some of them, because in some cases, they will need to be present in the product passport from the beginning. So it's the first time also that the European Union sets and creates a big registry where companies will need to register themselves and their products. So despite the fact that the European Parliament voted in favor of a decentralized data system, and we will go in 1 second on what it means to have a decentralized data system, At the same time, the European Commission decided to have a central registry, a place where you, as an economic operator, can know how to be the first economic operator that puts the product on the market. Because what you need to do is to go into that registry, register yourself, register your products. In the GS1 languages, include your GLN, Global Location Number, include your GTIN, your Global Trade Item Number, include them in that registry and discover if you are the first one putting that product on the market, then you are the one responsible for the digital product passport delivery. And this will happen through this central database. It's the first time that the European Union does something like this, having a place, a virtual place, where all companies will need to be registered, where all products will need to be registered. I see in some of your expressions that you see what it means, more than what I can say today. It's a big change. It's like our government knowing exactly who we are and where do we travel to and from. But this is happening on the sectors that you will see in a second in the street, here on the screen. These are the first lucky sectors to be involved in this big transformation. Some of those sectors are really important GS1 sectors. In some of them, we are not present, so we can't help you. For instance, we never worked on identification of iron, on steel. This is not us. GS1 is the retail issuing agency according to the ISO standards that govern us. So we are the agency who is capable of issuing global trade identification numbers thanks to the member companies and the member organizations like GS1 Portugal who issue numbers for the companies that they represent. So if you are in these areas, GS1 can help you, but not in all of them, so our capability is limited to retail, to products that are sold in retail as usual. This is our typical environment where we operate. It's already a reality, the DPP. So I told you that the legislation has passed, but more importantly, it is being enshrined, included in pieces of legislation that are following up. So if you are in the toy sector, for instance, if you are selling toys, be aware that the toy safety regulation is being changed and that they already included the digital product passport idea. There is an article speaking about the compulsory digital product passport. The same for detergents, the same in packaging, and I think this is cross-sectorial, and the same regarding the green claims rules. So the digital product passport, if I should resume, is the only central element in all this tsunami of legislation that we'll be facing. That's why I put it in the middle of the slide, right? And I have an animation that, okay. In the middle of the slide, you have the DPP. On the left and on the right, you have all the legislations that are either preparing for the digital product passport or including the digital product passport on the left side of the screen. So you see toys, the detergents, critical raw materials, the green claim, the ones that I already mentioned, okay? But it's for us at GS1, this is at the center of this tsunami of legislation. So we found our own way of reading that mass of new acts and trying to support the industry that we serve in a meaningful way because it speaks about product identification, data capturing, and data sharing. How do we do this? We have the global location number that can help you identifying the market of destinations and the locations where your products are developed. And this is a mandatory element for the product passport. So the GLN can serve. We have the GTIN, identifying the finished products, but also some of the components. We have very important migration to next generation of barcodes, which in the slide we call 2D. Because without a 2D, you can't transmit this information to consumers. The linear barcode has done a successful life. Now we are going towards an era where we need to pass more information to all the economic operators along the supply chain and to all the consumers that buy the products. So we need this 2D migration to happen very quickly, because otherwise you can't transmit all this information through a linear barcode. There are some limited, we reach the limited capability of a linear barcode. And I say it with a lot of respect, but we need to migrate. Then we have a standard that is called Digital Link, which has now become an ISO standard. The ballot is opening these days at ISO level for the Digital Link to become an ISO standard as well. It's not just a GS1 standard anymore. The Digital Link does the magic of putting a URL next to the GTIN, the product code, so that you can marry the internet and the product that you have in your hands. And you as a company, you can share more information than what you can put in a 2D carrier. You can have a website where you put all your product data requirements, the ones that we saw in the other slide, the weight, the size, the color, maybe some certificates, links to certificates, and then you reference that page next to the GTIN in a carrier. And this is the Digital Product Passport. You are already members of the GS1 community. This doesn't request a big investments. For those of you who are already using our standards, it should be, I'm not saying easy, but it's a smoother transition than many others, okay? And if you use those global standards, your passport can be read in all customs. I was speaking during lunch to some of you that move goods from Mexico to Portugal and vice versa. You have only one passport that can enable this. If you base it on global standards, it's possible. If you speak one language in one country, also in data, and another language in another country, you don't have the common ontology, you don't have the common semantic, they will stop your goods at custom, because the Digital Product Passport is a precondition of putting your products on the European market. It's not just another voluntary initiative of the European Union. It's a mandatory initiative that is a precondition to position products on the market. I want to repeat it because we need to be crystal clear. This is coming, and it's coming very soon. At the speed that I told you, it's unprecedented. So what are we doing at GS1 to support you? Apart from having this wonderful opportunity of speaking to all of you like today, thanks to GS1 Portugal, we developed a data architecture that is accessible. The slides are accessible, so you click on the link and you get the data architecture, because today I had to be very light. I just named the standards, but there is a data architecture that you can go and access. We are also already testing the standards in pilots. Some of those pilots are publicly funded. So we are using the money of the European Union to test some of the standards, together with other identifiers, because some of you are real experts. You know that, for instance, if in your product you use aluminum is identified with other numbering systems. How do you use them once that aluminum gets into a packaging, that gets into a finished product? Well, this is something we've been piloting, and you find the links to the pilots that we are running at European level, CIRPAS 1 and 2, the German battery pass, the KEEP project in Sweden. So they refer to different sectors where we've been already testing. Something else that we are doing, we open up a standardization table at global level in order to refresh the GS1 standards. And we are doing stakeholders involvement, like today, to speak about this and to hear from you, because we need to serve you. So we saw this opportunity coming. The Digital Product Passport, in a way, is a new opportunity of using the GS1 standards. But we need to learn from you, from the companies. What are your needs? Do you see it, of course, as a challenge, but in which direction should we go in order to better serve you? We are piloting with public money, but maybe piloting is possible in specific sectors that we didn't cover so far. So I encourage you to be very creative. And there are a lot of associations that are really involved in the Digital Product Passport. We, the GS1 community, we help you on the how. we don't overlap with the other associations. It's up to those associations that represent the same companies to do the what, the when, and the why talks around the legislation. We are a technical organization, so we support you with the standards on the how to deliver the product passport. But if you have questions on, oh, but why is the product passport happening? There have been other associations that were representing you in Brussels that are playing a pivotal role in that dimension, better than what we could do. We support from the how, from the data requirement side, from our capacity of developing standards and better standards and services for you. But it's very important that we collaborate also with associations. And that's why I've met some of you today in the room. I think this is fundamental. Nobody can make a passport alone. We can only make it all together. So this was really my last slide with the group that we opened up at global level. You scan the QR code and you get, of course, more information on the group that is open to refresh the GS1 standards on the digital product passport. This group is guided by P&G, H&M, Avery Dennison, and GS1 Turkey. So we have 4 co-chairs, and we are already more than 400 participants in this global group. We are reshaping the GTIN, the GLN, and the other standards that can serve you to deliver the digital product passport. So with this, I really want to thank you. I think Beatrice has some questions for me, and I remain available.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you for your so interesting presentation. Please take the microphone. You raise such interesting subjects and areas. Thank you. Don't lose it. It's important. I just want to make some points to make sure that it's very clear for all of us the importance of digital product passport for industry and for the business. You raised the question about legislation. It's a tsunami of legislation. And the digital passport, it's a matter of sustainability, circularity, but it's also a matter of data structure. In a nutshell, what can you say about, and also it's very important in this process to involve stakeholders so that everybody can agree on the importance of standards. So in a nutshell, what can you say about the importance of GS1 in this process?
Thank you. Thank you for your nice words. I think that I try to make some examples on how to deliver one passport for the first time. It's really very important that data is clear and data is agreed among the different actors. So in a way, you, as the first economic operator of putting the passports and the products on the market, you will be liable of not doing a complete passport, okay? So the passport should be complete, the passport should be available on time, and before the products reach the customs or the products go into the market. So in order to reach that level of data exchange and data structuring, there is a universe of stakeholders' interactions that you need to have in place. Because, for instance, to be sure about what is your market of destination of that product, this already demands some data intelligence in this first economic operator that may be, for instance, your exporter. This entity should be entitled to share this important information with the authorities on the registry of the European Union and also with your clients. So this data is also an opportunity for the companies, not just to be compliant, but also to transform the way they manage the data today. Otherwise, you just see it as a barrier and you say, I cannot do it. I think GS1 Portugal is here to support you in order to see this as an opportunity on how to use the standards that you have already in place and that you explain so well with the trainings, with this initiative, with investing with your members, in order for them to really find an ecosystem, a place where they can build this information and exchange it in a way that is meaningful for the business, and then it's also compliant with the legislation. Otherwise, it's just a question of going onto a website of the European Union, put some information there, and you think you are done. But actually, somebody will knock at your door and say, is this information complete, correct? And then how do you do it if you don't have behind you, as a company, a data management structure where you can have one language, the language of business, using global standards in order to get advantage of that data, use it for your purposes and for the digital product passport. So to answer to your question, Beatrice, I think we are living in a unprecedented opportunity of exchanging and building data based on the GS1 standards again, and to do it in a way that is really, according to the different supply chains, is really convenient for your sector, is really done at the size of your sector, because of course the challenges that the apparel sector will face are not exactly the same as sectors where there is only one component of finished product, okay? If you make a textile, if I look at your beautiful piece of apparel, of course, it changes every 6 months. It changes the nuances of the colors, of the fibers, of the chemical substances, and this should be captured by a passport. And so for some sectors, it's really something dramatically new. Because in sectors where, for instance, if I look at healthcare or food, those sectors have the habit of being regulated, of building data in a way to be, you know, of course they have always new and new challenges, but they have a big platform and capability of using the standards as well. In those new sectors, we need to multiply the efforts and find this ecosystem, and I hope GS1 Portugal will be the place where this will happen for sectors that maybe so far were not really at the top level of the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your words, because exactly what my next question is related exactly with the words that João Guimarães said in the beginning, that GS1 Portugal was nominated the representative of the national standardization body, IPQ, Instituto Português da Qualidade, that nominated GS1 Portugal to represent the organization in the CEN-CENELEC. So how do you see this position regarding the other member organizations at GS1? Because I think it's a little bit...
You've been a champion. You've been fantastic. Because the CEN and CENELEC environment, I don't know how many of you know this acronym. The CEN and CENELEC are the two standardization bodies that are established by the treaties of the European Union. So they are governed by the European Union. They are supported by the member states of the European Union. While when you speak to GS1 Portugal, you speak to an entity that is governed by you, by the industry. We are dramatically different because we start from the reality of the market. We are a fact. Our standards are built by industry for the industry, and they have a history of making goods transitioning all over the world. While other standards that are dictated by the regulators have the risk to be like legislation, frankly. You close yourself in a room and you say, what do we want to achieve? And it's a big achievement of the people that are in the room. But being in the room is already very distant from what happens on the market, where companies are every day. So the fact that you were able to enter that room, the CEN and CENELEC room, through the national Portuguese mirror group, standardization group, is fantastic. And you will be the ambassadors of the companies. You need to see yourself in that environment, because I spent many hours in that environment, if I may say, to see yourself as the champion of the ones that are doing, of the doers, of the ones that are on the market, and knowing what really happens. And you need to bring your expertise, your added value, because they don't know. They know how to make a good legislation, of course, but they don't know what it means to sell products on the market every day and need to build a digital structure that includes green data. So being in that room is fantastic, and I really congratulate you. I know a couple of other member organizations who did it, but I know that their environment is different from yours. I think in Portugal, if I look at your ability to bring stakeholders and to speak with others, I think you are really able to make a difference. In other environments, maybe there is more opposition because of the history of the chemical sectors and other situations. I think you have a real opportunity. So thank you for grabbing it, because it helps also us, all of us, at global level.
Thank you, Francesca. We really are embracing this project with a lot of enthusiasm inside the organization. We are just in the beginning of a process of engaging a lot of sectors, some of them that we are not very close, as you have said, like steel and aluminium, for example, or chemicals. But we are in this process, and we are also already have an agenda to set up some meetings to engage these associations, and they give us a very good feedback on our approach for them. So we are all embracing this project with a lot of enthusiasm. And with this, having said this, I don't know if anybody has questions for Francesca about the digital product passport or the circularity or traceability legislation, sustainability.
I see a lady down there.
No, I'll go,
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Inez. I'm with Coca-Cola today. My question is more about where does it start, I mean the product passport, and where does it end? So for example, if that chair needs to have a passport, do you have a passport for the product, so the chair, and then you need to have one for the tissue, for the nails, for the metal? Is that it?
Thank you for the question. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, the law says components, Article 1, components and finished products need to carry passport. Then there are other articles that are not very clear, but they give for granted that if you have a passport for components, like in the example you just made for the chair, you have a passport for the fibers, the apparel, the tissue, the textile that was used to make the chair. Because it is per se a finished product, because it is being sold between two entities, it needs to carry a passport. Then, if you are the one who's making the chair, you will need to include the passport of the textiles and of the aluminum that makes this chair. If I'm not wrong, this is a piece of furniture with textile and aluminum. And so you need to combine those two passports. When you registered yourself in the web portal of the European Union, if you don't have this information, you may end up by giving incomplete information. And this is one case for liability. So in order to solve this issue, that has been a long debate in Brussels. In the last 2 years, we've been discussing a lot about this, especially when you go to chemical substances. Because in the example you gave, it's pretty evident that these are two pieces of finished products that enter to make one product. But when you have chemical substances, it's even more complicated than this. Well, the debate is solved in this way. The European Union will make what is called a delegated act, a piece of legislation, giving instructions on how to develop a passport for the chairs, how to develop a passport for goods that are composed of many other goods. So the first one that is being released now is about having those initiatives, those components of finished apparel and sportswear and footwear. So they started from there. And I think we will have a lot to learn because it's one of the most intricate sectors in terms of components, number of components. So the answer is yes. It needs to be included in the finished product passport, and how we will understand it through legislation that is targeted per sector. Thank you.
Any other questions? Please.
Quick one related to this. If I'm a supplier of to use the chair example, and I want to keep, how does this cross with intellectual property? So if I want to keep some things about my product secret, maybe the exact type of textile I'm using or how I put it together, what things can I omit or what things can I still keep as trade secrets versus things that I'm now obligated to put into the passport?
Thank you. Commercial sensitive information and trade secrets are excluded. This has happened thanks to the European Parliament debate. In the beginning, the text of the European Commission was unclear, and companies were all fearing about having to disclose confidential information, especially that it goes into a registry that will be publicly accessible and searchable by everybody. So it means that you can put all the dots together, you download the market share of a company, right? So that's why, through the European Parliament, some amendments were included. And the agreement that was reached in the political agreement is about not having to disclose any confidential information or trade secret, but still information that is important for circularity. So I think that every company will understand what it is, but it's very difficult to have one definition for everybody. But I'm sure if we go to the example of the chair today, just to be very pragmatic, so it can't be how you obtain this red, because this red is probably something that you want to protect. It's a commercially sensitive information. Only you were able to do that fabulous red, the Ferrari red, that is unique. Only you have it. But the fact that the chair is red needs to be included and you choose red among the colors, the data attributes, let's say, that should be available, okay? So the list of attributes shouldn't say Ferrari red, it should say red, and you pick the red and you disclose this. So nobody so far is asking companies to include confidential information or trade secret. It's even been excluded by amendments from the European Parliament, because at the beginning, as I said, it was not clear, and this was really an impediment for many companies to go out and say, yes, we support the digital product passport. So this came out of the political process, so for once it was a good negotiation, a good discussion. So no more doubts, no commercial sensitive information.
Okay, wow, another question.
Thank you. One question about the transportation media, the assembly boxes, transportation boxes. Is it previewed in the data model to have normal standard size, dimensions, weight of the transportation media, for example?
Not so far, but there is the CO2 data element that companies will need to disclose. So the big question was, in this CO2 calculation, do we put part 3, part 2, part 1 of the whole scope of CO2? How should be done? So a big debate again. Then the Commission said, I will do it by delegated acts. I will tell you exactly the granularity level, because this is something for us, the standard expert, is very important to have discussions on the granular level of the passport. So, for instance, it's clear for us, the humans, that we have one person, one passport. At a certain point, you will remember that we had to put our kids into the passports. Then it was not anymore the case, and a new law was established to have children having their own passport. Remember? So I think we will also face this situation for the years, some years to come, depending on the sector, where if we don't know the granularity level, is it per person? Is it per family? Is it per trade item? Is it per cargo? Is it batch? Is it serialized? because serialization is one of the big elements in the GS1 environment as well. So as far as we don't know the granular level, we cannot answer to the question, because through the CO2 emissions, if they take a granular level at a batch level, maybe some of the elements will influence the final CO2. And also, the CO2 element will become, according to the law, an element for consumers to better choose products. So basically, we are going to face an area where us, the consumers, all of us, can compare 2, 3 products in a retail and say, oh, I prefer this because it has less CO2 than the other one. And this is something completely new, because the CO2 emissions were used in a different way so far. We understood that it was an element to reach the net zero goal of the 2050, right? We thought that the government had a pact with industry saying we need the data to go to a better circular world. Now it becomes a competitive element. And so we need more explanations on how we need to use it. Is it transport included? Is it per product? Can I mass balance? It's a technique that some of you use, right? When you want to calculate the CO2 emissions, you sometimes do the mass balance. Or should I do it per product, by serializing per every product? So they told us, and to many in the debate, that this will be solved by singular legislative acts. And don't lose them, because those acts will request people and companies to answer to the consultations. So again, my advice is to really use the GS1 environment to send answers back to the government and say, hey, we see that for detergents, for instance, is one of the recent examples of 2 weeks ago, the Detergent Acts, the European regulation on detergents, includes DPP, the Digital Product Passport, at the batch level. I've seen some of you raising eyebrows. Yeah, it's not possible. The batch level, how do you know the batch level if you sell detergents through digital world? The batch is not a given, right? How do you know it? So we wrote letters with Eurocommerce, independent cooperatives, independent retail. We put different associations together with logos, and we wrote letters to the European Union, right, to the European Parliament, to say batch level is not possible. So these are typical arguments for GS1. Then the other associations, of course, are looking at many other aspects of the passport, but we can specifically look at the granularity, at the data requirements. We don't look a lot on the methodologies of CO2 emissions. I know GS1 Portugal is a champion with the Lean and Green Initiative and others, but we don't develop standards for right CO2 methodologies, but other organizations, they do this, but we can combine with others and support your views. I hope I answered to your question. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, how do we control the products that come to Europe and make competition with us? Do they have DPP? They come from India with that? They come from Turkey with that? Well,
that's what
you know
saying.
Something about it?
So the promise written in the regulation is the fact that this needs to be applicable to all products coming into the European market. So if, in your example, India and Turkey, right, if the products arriving at customs don't have it, they are stopped at customs. This is what the regulation is saying. More importantly, when you registered, you are in Turkey or in India, in the example that you just made, you know that your products need to go into the European Union. You need to go on the registry of the European Union, register yourself as an Indian company, register your components or finished product as Indian components and finished product. If you fulfill this process in a correct way, you receive from the European Union an approbation. It's artificial intelligence. You receive a completed check of this process, and you receive a code that is secret only for you. This code, you will need to include it in the custom declaration so that those products, when they reach customs, they match with artificial intelligence, with the SEDEX system of the customs at European level, that they match that number with the GITIN and the GLN that you have included at the beginning of the process. This is what the law says. I can't say if this will really be enforced or not. I understand your question was more on the enforcement. I cannot say it. What I can say is that the law today includes these elements.
Thank you for your fantastic participation and for your fantastic contribution as well, Francesca. Thank you very
so
much.
much. Thank you.
You're very
It's been a
interesting.
real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.